I have been a BBC editor and I can tell you there's absolutely no way you can justify why you would invite Richard Tice on a day that his party has won only 2 seats and not Galloway, whose party has won 4 seats, including inflicting a defeat on the deputy leader of Manchester City Council.
The political geniuses at Sky News have just reported that Labour lost, and I quote, 1 seat to an independent. In fact, they lost 2 seats to the Workers' Party of Britain, the party of the sitting Member of Parliament.
Hello, so as I said before, the Gaza conflict has revealed or exposed many entities and many individuals, both in this country and around the globe. In this country, in the UK, we now know the true colours of the Labour Party. We know that the Labour Party is no longer the Labour Party that we thought of it in the past, when we thought it as an alternative political outfit to the Conservative. Now, there's hardly any difference between the Conservative and the Labour Party. That's clear. And in fact, this Labour Party, as I will explain later in this video, is under full grip of Israelis. So effectively, this Labour Party is doing exactly what will suit the ideologies of those ruling the Israeli government. And I'll explain why. Because something dangerous has happened. The reason why I'm recording this video is to discuss the outcome of the local body elections and mayoral elections. So we saw yesterday, and the counting is still underway for West Midlands and London mayors, but broadly we know that Conservative Party has been decimated, as we've expected. There is no surprise in that. And it's only a matter of time before, Sunak will be history and Conservative Party will be history. But we also know that Labour Party has gained a lot of seats, including winning a by-election. But then we also know that it's not certain that Labour Party is going to form the government with majority if and when Sunak announces parliamentary elections. Another highlight of the outcome was the Workers' Party headed by George Galloway winning 4 council seats. 4 council seats across 3 different councils. And most notable victory came from Manchester, where Workers' Party candidate beat the deputy leader of Manchester City Council, Lutfur Rahman. That is quite surprising. That we would have thought that Workers' Party would do well in Rochdale, where George Galloway won the by-elections recently. Indeed, they did well. They won 2 seats with more than 50% vote share. More than 50% vote share. That's a sign that more and more people are leaving the Labour Party under Keir Starmer. Remember the same Keir Starmer who had justified the stoppage of water supply, the electricity, the food to 2.4 million Gazans by Israelis.
I'm very clear. Israel must have that, does have that right to defend herself, and Hamas bears responsibility.
A siege is appropriate? Cutting off power, cutting off water? Sakir?
Well, I think that Israel does have that right. It is an ongoing situation. Obviously, everything should be done within international law, but I don't want to step away from the sort of core principles that Israel has a right to defend herself and Hamas bears responsibility for these terrorist acts. And I would call on all responsible states, particularly Middle East responsible states, to call this out for what it is, and to stand with the world in utterly condemning these actions by Hamas.
So I'm not surprised that more and more people, including Muslims, are dissociating themselves from Labour Party, because that's the right course of action. That's how anybody who has any feeling for humanity should do that. But what came as a shock was the despicable role played by the mainstream media, including the BBC, who we fund, you and I fund. We pay £160 every year. That's a lot of money we pay to fund this organization. And what it does, it spends most of its time and energy in promoting one particular ideology. It was evident yesterday. So we had political parties. You have established political parties like Conservative, the Labour, the Lib Dem, the Greens, and we had smaller parties this time, which is the Workers' Party and the Reform Party. Guess what? Workers' Party wins 4 seats. Reform wins 2 seats. Who gets the publicity on BBC platform? Not Workers' Party. No mention, literally no mention of Workers' Party except for 1 or 2 lines. Who gets a blanket coverage? Reform Party. See this. Richard Tice, who is the head of Reform Party, is invited on BBC platform, main BBC channel, which is watched by millions. And he's given free airtime to promote his ideology when there is absolutely no editorial justification.
What's rapidly becoming clear is basically, as more people hear us about reform, we're becoming the real opposition to the Labour Party in the North, in the Midlands, in Wales. We're on the way up, and it's quite clear that the Tories are on the way down. The more people who vote reform, then the more reform we've got the opportunity to get. Look, there's no difference between the main 2 parties.
I have been a BBC editor, and I can tell you there's absolutely no way you can justify why you would invite Richard Tice on a day that his party has won only 2 seats, and not Galloway, whose party has won 4 seats, including inflicting a defeat on the deputy leader of Manchester City Council. But George Galloway is nowhere to be seen on BBC platform. Not only that, BBC makes an online story based on the video interview that it conducts on TV. And it promotes from various Twitter handles. One, BBC News, which has more than 10-15 million followers. Then the same story is pushed from BBC Politics Show, which has in excess of 1 million followers. The idea, the agenda is clear, that what Richard Tice, whose party has won just 2 seats, says is amplified to millions of people. But there is absolutely no attempt to give a similar coverage to Workers' Party. Why? Because Workers' Party's leader has been critical of Israeli government. Richard Tice hasn't been. It's clear. Right? And this is the organization that you and I fund. This is despicable. If this is not the example of shameful biases by the BBC, then nothing is. And it doesn't end here. George Galloway would tell you that how Sky News has been doing its own share of biases.
The political geniuses at Sky News have just reported that Labour lost, and I quote, 1 seat to an independent. In fact, they lost 2 seats to the Workers' Party of Britain, the party of the sitting Member of Parliament. And boy did they lose, by 2 landslides, in 1 seat, an 1100 majority against the sitting Labour councillor. I'm not sure in the entire country that any sitting councillor has lost their seat today by 1100 votes. Get with the programme, Sky.
And this doesn't end here. It's only a matter of time before it becomes formal that Andy Street will win the West Midlands mayoral election. But even before that happens, watch what BBC editor had to say yesterday.
All right, let's talk.
Just very
Yes.
that just for 1 second. That in our political editor in the West Midlands is saying that Labour are briefing there that they believe that they're going to be defeated in the West Midlands mayoral race. We're not going to get the result of that until tomorrow. That's Andy Street. And they're citing the independent candidate Ahmed Yaqub, who stood on a pro-Gaza ticket, saying that has been a major factor. Now, there's a bit of a row brewing there. A senior party, Labour Party source has said it's the Middle East, not the West Midlands, that will have won Andy Street the contest. Once again, Hamas are the real villains. A Conservative source has gone back to our political editor there, saying that that quote is vile, and they insist that the contest is extremely close. Yeah. So that issue coming up certainly there as well.
Is that the language that people should be using?
This is the first time I've heard this.
So when I say that this Labour Party under Keir Starmer has gone under a full grip of the Israelis, this is what I mean. Israelis do the same thing. When something goes wrong, it blames Hamas. It kills tens of thousands of people, it blames Hamas. It destroys hospitals, it destroys other facilities like schools, libraries, mosques, churches, it blames Hamas. Virtually everything, every crime that it commits, it blames Hamas. Now the Labour under Keir Starmer is doing the same thing. It cannot win elections. It has angered people. People are dissociating themselves from the disgusting ideology under the current leadership of the Labour Party. It is now blaming Hamas. No wonder the Tory party is calling it a vile narrative. It's a vile narrative. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.